Everyone, thank you for joining us on this special Unite to Heal campaign in support of Amudim. My name is Avi Landa. I am the Director of Education for Amudim. We provide many wonderful opportunities for schools, for communities, for shuls, for organizations, and for individuals to be able to reap the benefits of not only what Amudim is known for, intervention, but for prevention as well, for preventative educational opportunities, nights of awareness, being able to share from professionals, from educators, everything that we want to be able to give over to adults and to students and children alike. The crown jewel of the educational department of Amudim is the comprehensive social and emotional learning curricula named Darcheinu and Our Path SEL. These are both similar curricula to each other, one designed for the so-called more right-wing schools, one designed for the more left-wing schools, but really there to serve the full gamut, the full spectrum of all Jewish schools worldwide. Thank God we are now in over 90 schools and growing rapidly. It is a tremendous blessing to be a part of this beautiful curriculum, this social emotional learning curriculum that in the following segment we're going to learn more about. It is a privilege to be together with this team in this segment, the team that comprises the administrative team leading Darcheinu and Our Path SEL to greater growth and implementation throughout the schools in our Jewish communities. The team consists of Mrs. Shira Berkowitz, Program Director, Rabbi Yisrael Grossberg, Educational Consultant and Director, Rabbi Salim Mizrahi, helping the Program Coordinator and Writer, Curriculum Writer. He's a new addition, and he's actually going to be moderator for this upcoming segment. We're very excited to share with you. In this segment, the way that we're going to present this curriculum to you as educators, but also as parents, is by coming up with and presenting scenarios, actual scenarios that Amudim has dealt with over the years in intervention, changing them from having any identifying details, but keeping the core message the same, and allowing you, the parents and the educators, to see how would have a Darcheinu and Our Path SEL curriculum, a prevention curriculum, how could it have changed the course of these students' lives so that they wouldn't have ended up in the position they were ended up in, needing Amudim's intervention services. They could have benefited from such prevention services. We're going to talk about Chaim having issues, being able to cope with his emotions, being able to cope with difficult scenarios amongst his classmates, maybe even bullying. We're going to be talking about Yael, who is struggling so much with the war in Israel, with what's going on in Eretz Yisrael, and all the stress that entails. We're going to talk about Rivka and Chana, who are a little bit more than just neighbors. And you'll have to stay tuned to find out how that goes. And we're going to talk about Yitzchak, who was so excited to go to his brother's bar mitzvah. And when confronted with the bar, a dilemma ensued. Again, these are all typical scenarios that Amudim deals with all the time. But what we want to showcase and present to you is how prevention, how education can help these children, the next generation, avoid such difficult scenarios in their lives and be able to handle them when they come into contact with them. God willing, we'll be able to present that to you in the next segment. We look forward to it. And again, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Everland. I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to the segment today. I just want to take a chance, this chance right now, to say thank you to the three of you. Just a few years ago, starting off as an Amudim intern in the Israel office, seeing what the case management was like and how much goes into it, I'd hoped that I could be part of something that brings more of an awareness and more education, something that brings to the communities or to the yeshivas and seminaries in Israel. And then when I moved back here to America, you invited me to join this team, and just the work has been phenomenal. And I just want to say thank you. There's so much of a willingness to speak about emotions and feelings and investing into relationships, and obviously with that strive for a better mental health and overall social emotional development comes this inevitable confusion and maybe even dangers around how to go about best educating ourselves with a Torah perspective in mind, especially when so much of the culture today is sort of pushing back against that Torah and the values that we have. And I don't think anybody would disagree that really need to find an approach that may have not been used in the past, but something that fits what we have in this generation today. Even Yaakov Avinu, when he was 63 years learning with his father and his grandfather, to prepare himself for going to Lavan's house and that whole new reality, that whole new world, he needed another 14 years in a completely different yeshiva. And I think the challenges that we face today really require something new. At the same time, and understandably, people might just feel that, if I don't do it the right way, or if there's too much danger involved in bringing something new, it might be better to just sort of forego it altogether. And I think the fact that we have a Darcheinu and an Our Path curriculum really empowers the students, the parents, the teachers, and all of us as a community to address those needs. I think it's safe to say that the children today are living in a reality that's really been unparalleled in history. There's so much talk and there's a willingness to have open discussions about feelings, emotions, investing in relationships where we really didn't have that in the past. With that strive for a better mental health awareness, for a better social emotional development, comes inevitable confusion, dangers maybe around how to best going educating ourselves in those areas. With that strive comes the inevitable confusion and fear about how to best go about educating ourselves in those areas, especially when so much of the culture today injects doubts and skepticism into any mention of Torah or values or wisdom. I don't think there's anyone from across the board who wouldn't agree that there really needs to be a specific approach in how to best cater to these mental health needs and to the social emotional development of all of our children. Even in this week's parasha, Yaakov Avinu, after 63 years of sitting with his father and grandfather in Beit Midrash, he spends another 14 years in a completely different type of school, different type of approach, preparing himself for the challenges that he's going to face when he goes out to Lavan's house. But there's always worry, and understandably, that new and untested approaches could do more harm than good, and people might just refrain from addressing the topic altogether. I'd like to invite you all today to sort of walk us through the process of what does it look like? What does it mean to adhere to Torah values while at the same time investing in the necessity of a healthy social emotional development of our children, what that looks like, how that sounds, and what you've been doing from your end to sort of ensure that we have the needs met for our communities.
Hi, I'm Shira Berkowitz. I'm the Program Director of Darcheinu and Our Path SEL, Social Emotional Learning. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in Chicago, where I live. I want to introduce the other members of my team as well. Rabbi Yisrael Grossberg is the educational for Darcheinu, as well as the Menahel of Benos Bina Seminary in Brooklyn, New York, and the rabbinic advisor for both Amudim and Chazkeinu. Rabbi Avi Landa is a licensed mental health professional in Baltimore, Maryland, and a counselor at TA of Baltimore. He's the Director of Education for Amudim. Darcheinu and Our Path SEL are both vital preventative curricula, serving as one branch of the educational wing of Amudim. What we're going to do is to present some typical cases or calls that might find their way into the Amudim office for comprehensive case management. And we're going to approach these cases from a Darcheinu or Our Path SEL lens. These scenarios are real-life stories, but all identifying details have been changed. How will the curriculum being taught in the schools address these types of situations and hopefully even prevent them from developing altogether? How can we as parents, educators, support our children best living in the realities of today's world and help them to cope with the myriad of challenges that we're now dealing with?
We'll start with the first scenario. Rachel was busy in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard Chaim leaving the house. Chaim, is that you? Going out tonight? Yeah, Ma, just going to a friend's house for a little. Okay, have a great time, I love you. By midnight, Rachel was getting worried. She knew that teens had little track of time, but Chaim still hadn't come home and he wasn't answering any of her calls. Chaim was found by police officers later that night in the local park, alone and cold. He was embarrassed to come home, as if he'd let his family down. Earlier that year, Chaim's best friend thought it would be a funny prank to tell his classmates about Chaim's personal struggles with mental health issues, but he didn't anticipate the bullying that followed. For months, Chaim was harassed in class and from other students at school, and he could no longer bear the pain. Rabbi Grossberg, if you could start the discussion about the scenario.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Mizrahi. Just to echo what you said about the importance of today's session, I'm excited and happy that we're bringing these things out into the open, and there's no one else I'd rather be having this discussion with rather than the Darcheinu team, people that really they get it. And I think as we use the word team because each one of us brings our own unique flavor and talents to the table, and I'm honored to be part of this. A parent may be listening to this and say, "Well, my kid's not bullied. This scenario has nothing to do with me." I'm reminded of a situation, a flyer that I got a number of years ago, Rabbi Ronnie Greenwald, Zechariah Livracha, who really was calling out long in advance before everyone realized that we might be dealing with a mental health crisis in our community, sent out a flyer that he was having a get-together to discuss things like extreme bullying, depression, and he wrote, and these words made no sense to me whatsoever at the time, even in very extreme, obviously not common, but even one is enough, suicide among our Talmidim and Talmidos, which, at the time I think to myself, why in the world would I go to this? There's nothing to do with my students. It's nothing to, but I went. They were serving a good lunch. And what I heard knocked the socks off me, because what I realized was I didn't know what was going on in my own school. I was a principal at the time, and I realized that these things are very real. This young man in this story is really dealing with something that many students deal with, and the compounded shame that he feels because he's not going to go public, because then you're a baby. We as the mechanchim and as the parents and therapists, whoever, wherever we fall out, it's our job to be attuned to what's going on. We need to hear a scenario. We need to hear what someone's saying and really be able to read between those lines. If someone would have noticed the pain that Chaim was in and just seen that he wasn't himself, would have seen that that's quote unquote best friend who they had been so close with, all of a sudden now that friendship was gone. Small things, but small things that can be really big. We could have solved this problem that we would not have had the unfortunate time where the mother goes with the police to find her son in such pain sitting in the park. And I just feel the need to say, for those who are listening and saying, okay, these are very, very few and far between, these cases aren't really going on, I'm jealous of your naivety. And I don't mean that in a sarcastic way, but I'm saying that that you don't realize, but kids are growing up in very difficult times. There's so much on their mind. There's so much that's there. And we need to read between those lines. We need to see what they're not telling us, even when specifically in areas there's cyberbullying that never was before. Kids have become much more in tune with technology and knowing how to, even in schools where there is no technology, they find ways and to use it in a negative way. We as parents, as mechanchim, need to be attuned to what's going on, to see these things, to see the signs, so that there's never a story of a young man sitting in a park all by himself and the police had to find him.
Thank you, Rabbi Grossberg. Very well said, as always. And again, it's a privilege and a pleasure for me to be here with the team. Allow me to go through some steps in the actual sessions and units that we have in our wonderful social emotional learning curriculum to present to you how we might address this topic to the students in a classroom. And as Mrs. Berkowitz said so well, as in addition, that we can give these tools to the parents to be able to use some of these with their children in the chinuch of their homes. We like to try to include various sources and various activities in the sessions to keep them interesting and exciting for the children. We even recently came out with an animated series, a video that shows a child dealing with many things in their life that seem so unfair. And we partnered together with a professional video making company to be able to produce such high quality videos and animated videos, a series that we're looking forward to sharing more and more with the general public and especially our member schools. One area in which we would present to our students this whole topic of bullying is part of what makes a social emotional learning curriculum so special. Instead of Darcheinu and Our Path SEL being a project-based curriculum, where we come in for a week or two, we train the teachers, and we present to the children on that topic, that issue at hand, say bullying in this example, what makes it so special and so unique is how comprehensive of a curriculum It truly is. As it is with every subject, it's the redundancy and the repetition of the topic over and over again, where there's multiple areas that overlap with each other, that ultimately gives children a full, deep, and well-rounded education on the topic at hand. So when it comes to bullying, we don't start there. We start at the beginning. We have multiple classes on emotional coping, on understanding who you are vis-a-vis others, vis-a-vis yourself. We talk about communication skills, and let me jump in there. Being able to communicate your emotions is so powerful and so important. We find David HaMelech in Sefer Tehillim, and we tell this over to the students. He's communicating his emotions, and how much do we know about Tehillim nowadays more than any other time, when we're going through the difficult times that we're going through, and we turn to Tehillim as a safety for us, as a protective power for us, as a way for us to have tefillah and to daven. Tehillim is so powerful, and part of what makes it so powerful is the raw emotion that David HaMelech is expressing with Ruach HaKodesh in those special holy words. We give over to the children that this is something you find David HaMelech, the warrior, the man who was so strong, is able to get in touch with his own and even express so beautifully his emotion. We talk about communication skills, multiple classes on things like I statements, being able to confront a bully and tell them, I'm not happy with the way that you're speaking to me. It's making me feel upset. It's bothering me. Focusing on yourself and the feelings you're having, which is not up for debate. It's an extremely effective skill to be able to learn I statements, to be able to communicate what's bothering you as opposed to blaming and attacking, which can only lead to more attacks in both directions. We talk about nonverbal communication, where we do a fun activity, and I have the privilege of even doing this in class with the kids, and I can tell you, even middle school and high school boys, they enjoy these activities. Certainly the girls, but even the boys enjoy these activities. And you put up on a screen for only one kid to see a complex shape that they have to only use their words to describe. They can't use hand motions. They can't use the board, the whiteboard, to draw the picture. Only use words without any motion whatsoever. And they quickly learn how difficult it is to be able to convey such messages without the use of all the nonverbal communication skills that we have and that we use and that we need to get good at and understand. They love it. We talk about being a positive, active bystander, that if you're a kid in the class, one of the most powerful ways to help bullying not ever happen is for there to be a culture in the classroom where the other kids in the class are not standing for it, where a group will go over and tell that bully, we're not happy, this has to stop. That can be even more powerful than a teacher or rebbe and even parents and even a principal getting involved. These are just the tip of the iceberg, just some examples of elements of the curriculum that are presented from the ground up, foundational skills, and ultimately getting to actually addressing the issues at hand, bullying, and many of the other issues that we'll talk about today, that allow this curriculum to be so successful. And I'm so happy that we're able to share it with everyone today.
Thank you, Rabbi Grossberg and Rabbi Linda. I think we're going to go into scenario number 2, something that I think nowadays, in the times that we're going through and the challenges that we're facing, especially with specifically with the current events in Eretz Yisrael, I think the next scenario maybe could be something that we could all relate to in one way or another. El, how many times do I have to tell you to close the lights? It's almost 1 o'clock. Yaakov couldn't believe that his daughter was still up again. Ugh, Abba, I told you already, all of my cousins are either fighting in Gaza or have family that's in the army. The more Tehillim that I read, the more zechiyot I'll have of surviving. Yael, I keep telling you, your intentions are great, but you need to maintain your health too. Going to sleep this late every night is going to get you sick. Health? Did you see the latest video that came out about how they kidnapped little babies? Who cares about health? This is my way of doing something for those little babies, for the soldiers, for everyone. Yael eventually began seeing a therapist because of the anxieties of the war, and more specifically, because of all the scenes of horror that she had seen that were just too much for her to process alone. Rabbi Grossberg, well, call you.
Yeah, as Rabbi Mizrahi said, this is clearly something that is, a topic, sadly, is very much in everyone's mind. And it's so important. And as Rabbi Landa was speaking about what the curriculum does, it gives students the language to express themselves. You're a 9th grade boy. You're very cool, and you're terrified about your relatives in Eretz Yisrael. or you're terrified about what's going on in the United States. How do you express this to an adult? Yeah, or it's beginning to reach you a point where, and this was a real life case I had dealt with, where a girl decided she was going to start fasting because as a schus for the chayalim and chayalos, with the best of intentions, but again without proper hadracha on how we as Yidden, how we deal with this. Or what about the student who feels that their emunah and their bitachon has been shaken? Right? How do they deal? Forget about the students. We as adults have to address this as well. The bottom line is that having a curriculum, and it's not about an advertisement of it, honestly, it's about really, really helping kids and giving them the language and the tools for dealing things that no one should ever have to deal with. And as Rabbi Mizrahi pointed out, we have to assume that the kids are going to see. There are a lot of parents that are in la la land thinking, well, we don't have any social media in our homes, we don't have anything, our kids haven't seen it. They have. Bottom line is, I know this firsthand. Welcome to call me, we can discuss it. But they've seen it and they're affected by it. And once again, giving them a safe place where they can now discuss these fears, where they can speak about what's the appropriate, how to chazal, and again, this is the beauty of having a curriculum that where Limudei Kodesh and Limudei Chol, or chazal and proper therapeutic interventions, we'll say, that where they come together to work. That's the beauty of Darcheinu. That's the beauty of this. So we have here this student who, with the best of intentions, is staying up all night and can't even understand the parent. And the parent in this story may actually say, my tzaddikus, I'm so proud of her, but there's something unhealthy over here. And without that ability to identify what is healthy and what's not healthy, there are a lot of students that would unfortunately be doing things with the best of intentions, but in reality not being where they are supposed to be. It's a scary time. There's no two ways about it. There's no other way to describe it. Whether you're a teenager, whether you're an adult, I mean, it's unprecedented times. I feel every time we use the word unprecedented, we get to another unprecedented time. Having the ability for getting the words and knowing how to deal with it ultimately can make the difference between a healthy understanding of what's going on or something that you keep up inside. I have to tell you, what we're seeing in the chinuch world is that it's coming out in interesting ways, meaning the child who is really affected by the war may be fighting more with a friend. Now, you're thinking to yourself, well, that has nothing to do with the war, but there's a certain level of unrest within themselves. It might come out from people that are sleeping. There's so many different ways that it's coming out, and they may not even know themselves. The ability to identify and to get the help, that really is what we can do to give our students, Talmidim and Talmidos, the best ability to get through such difficult times and end up on the other side really in a healthy way.
So I'm going to jump in here and add a couple of things. I want to take this apart a little bit. The one thing Rabbi Grossberg did not really touch on is the media piece. And I don't think I need to say it here because I think the last month, and now it's already a month and a little bit, I think we've heard from enough Rabbanim and enough psychologists and enough educators the trauma of seeing what's on the media. And it's kind of a balance, I know for me, and wanting to know what's going on and wanting to be part of Klal Yisrael and be there with them in the tzara, but at the same time, and I'm a trauma trained therapist, just putting it out there. I'm not going to get traumatized, I guess, so easily, but at the same time, I don't watch the videos. I watch the inspiring ones, the ones that give me chizuk, but I don't watch the videos of the horrors. And just a reminder, and I know we've all heard this already, but just a reminder, it's not helpful for us, and it's certainly not helpful, and it's extremely destructive to our children to be watching traumatic, visual, graphic, any kind of things that are going on in Eretz Yisrael. That aside, let's just talk about a minute. Let's talk about Yael. So where she's at right now, she's having extreme anxiety, let's call it at this point, and I'm not diagnosing her with this little paragraph here, but clinical anxiety and maybe touches of OCD I'm seeing in there as well. So clearly she needs, intense therapy right now, but let's take it back a notch to what our goal is as parents and as the Darcheinu, the social emotional learning curriculum. But as parents, we try to do this with our children in the same way, which is why I feel like talking about the curriculum is also giving parenting tips and educational tips for all of us. I've shared this story before, but I had a client that the school asked me to see, and she was in high school. I don't remember exactly which grade. And she started describing some of the symptoms, some of what's going on for her. And I said to her, it sounds like you have struggling with some anxiety. And she looked at me and she said, "What's anxiety?" And I just wanted to cry. I felt like we failed her. Like where was the school? Where are the parents? Like, how can we be in high school and we don't know the term anxiety? But like we say to people, to the schools, when I present the program to them, with a social emotional learning curriculum, or with parents who are giving these skills to their children, the goal is we don't wind up with people who have clinical anxiety. If we can identify our feelings, if we say something to our parent or our teacher and it's like, sounds like you're feeling kind of anxious. What's anxious? Oh, it's when you're feeling like this. What do we do for anxiety? How do we cope with this? We don't have to end up, and yes, there's always going to be yotzei min haklal. There's always going to be dysfunction. There's always going to be abuse, unfortunately. And unfortunately, Amudim will never be out of business, like which is all everyone in Klal Yisrael's dream. But I think that 75%, 90% of our children don't have to end up with clinical depression, with clinical anxiety, if we can build in them and teach them how to recognize their feelings earlier and how to cope with them, when to get help for themselves, when to get help for their friend, etc. As parents, I think that it's our job really also just to be the holder for our children's feelings. They should never feel like it's too big for my parents. They can't handle it. I don't want to share with them. It's so important that we encourage them to communicate, that we notice what's on their faces. When they're not telling us, we ask, we validate, and we help them. Another just example that comes to mind, this is pretty recently, but I have a daughter in 4th grade, and they were taking their first, and I guess the details are okay, and I said I live in Chicago because it's all L'Shavach here. It's so L'Shavach. They had their first Chumash test, and it was on Berchus Yaakov. And I called the teacher because I had a quick question for her. And she says to me, I wish that I can help these girls. Like, they're all so anxious about this test. I feel bad that the first Chumash test is on Berchus Yaakov. And I know for me, studying with my daughter, like, I had to look up some of the words. Like, it's hard. Berchus Yaakov, they're hard words. And I said to her, I said, really? I said, do you mean it? You really want something to help them with their anxiety? Because if so, you came to the right place. I know I called you, but sure. Can I give you some tools? And she's like, yes, please. And I walked her through some mindfulness, some grounding techniques. And I heard from my daughter the next day. I said, how was your Chumash test? She said, whatever she said, it was fine. But she said, yeah, Maury did with us a couple of things. And I was so impressed and so happy. And but look what a difference it can make. Like, if we can do grounding techniques, like in kindergarten, like in nursery, at home with our children. I know for my kids, when they can't fall asleep, it's like we do the 5 senses one, and all the therapists out there, you know what I'm talking about. There's so many things that we can be doing at home. And then if we have the curriculum in the schools, like Baruch Hashem, close to 90 schools right now in America and 3 other countries, that the goal is to prevent our children from becoming clinically anxious, clinically depressed, from all these other mental health disorders. A lot of it really can be prevented.
If I could just add one thing, Mrs. Berkowitz, thank you so much for all those words. We actually have free resources available to everyone, to the entire public, at our website, www.darcheinu.org. At that website, under curriculum resources, there are 3 free parental supplemental resources, and one of them on topic is tragic current events, the war in Israel. We put it together about a week after everything that happened. And it is a wonderful, actually, you can see exactly how a session is outlined and organized in our curriculum. And that's something that people can go to the website right now and download. Maybe we'll have an opportunity to outline some of the other free resources there as well. But I wanted to make sure on this topic that you're all aware that that is something you can go and download right now. And it is a wonderful educational resource. You can use aspects of that with your children as parents, and certainly as teachers in your classrooms, even if you're not yet a member Darcheinu and Our Path SEL school.
Very powerful words. I thank you all for that answer, for your answers. And Ms. Berkowitz, also to what you were saying, just the power of giving words to the feelings that they don't have a name for. We might take it for granted that they have, they know what anxiety or depression or things like that might mean, and they're feeling it without knowing what it's called. So just giving them that tool, that skill, is powerful. I think that the curriculum definitely does a job on that.
I'm just going to add one more thing on what you just said. And it's a piece that we do in the curriculum, but I think it's really, I think a lot of these words get like thrown out there like all the time now. I have a lot of girls. I'm so depressed. Oh my gosh. She's such anxiety. She's so OCD. I'm like, I think that we need to clarify, and we teach them like what is feeling sad? What is feeling like really down? What is clinical depression? No, you're not depressed. Baruch Hashem, you don't. So, I think they need to understand. We do that. We do like the variations and the spectrum of different feelings. And I think that's just another piece that it's important to work on with our children as they get older, the levels.
So the next scenario is a little bit different than the first two. The first two might be something that people are aware of. People know what bullying, and they know that it's not good. Second scenario is a little bit more about the current events. The third scenario, I would say, is we're really looking to speak to those people, to those children who might be in the scenario, but might not have somebody to turn to. So with that, I'm going to open up the scenario, and we'll hear the thoughts afterwards. Rivka and Chana were more than just neighbors. They were best friends. They did everything together. They started high school together. They studied for every test together. They even went on vacations together. They were inseparable. And now they would both be going to sleepaway camp together for the first time. They were very excited to spend a few weeks away from home, away from all the chores and errands, and just to have fun. That's why it was a no-brainer when they were placed in the same bunk. If they were such good friends living in separate houses, imagine what it would look like being roommates. But something strange was happening, something very unexpected. Rivka began feeling uncomfortable, almost like she was losing her space, and not to mention her privacy. Chana was getting too close to the point of making Rivka even feel a little bit uneasy. This was her best friend, and she really couldn't describe what was bothering her, but she knew that something was going on. She wasn't sure if she should tell her counselors, the camp director. She didn't know if she should tell her parents. She didn't want to lose the friendship. She decided to just ignore the feelings and make it as if everything was fine. Belinda, I guess we'll open up with you on this one.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi Mizrahi. This is a very important topic. It touches upon a few topics. Basic educational awareness of what's happening in the development of our minds and bodies as we go through the preteen and teenage stage. Why is it happening? What's healthy and what's not? Because so much of what kids are confused about actually is extremely healthy and a part of growing up. And a lot of anxiety can be relieved when they're simply told, this is healthy, this is normal, these feelings are normal. Normalizing those feelings are so crucial. This is a topic that we address to an extent for girls in the curriculum and to a larger extent for boys as well. On the boys' side, we have specific tools that have been developed under the auspices of Torah Masorah and Revelia Brudny and Rav Aaron Feldman. The Kedusha Talk booklet is one of such resources where the Rebbe, the Mashgiach, the teacher, they get a special training in being able to have that type of conversation with a child in the middle school years, preparing them as they're growing up with understanding these feelings, what's happening, what changes they should expect. They shouldn't all of a sudden have a change happen in their body and be wondering quietly and silently and confused, but they should recognize that it's normal and healthy and that it's actually all part of a wonderful plan to slowly turn into an adult, to be able to have a family, that there's such beauty, Kedusha, holiness involved in such things. The Kedusha Talk booklet is a wonderful resource that we received much positive feedback on. And like I said, it has that special training for the teacher to be able to present such crucial information, making sure the children know what's normal, what's healthy, how beautiful and wonderful, how kadosh and holy these topics are. We have an additional follow-up conversation that's prepared and ready for a special training for high school level called Maintaining Kedusha, special training there, and again, making sure that we are able to present such things in an appropriate educational way and in a healthy way, a kadosh way, to our high school children as well. This actually gives me also an opportunity to present the other two free resources that we have available again right now at darcheinu.org. Under curriculum resources, we have another two booklets. One is called Discussing Delicate Current Events, which is more related to what we were talking about before in terms of the difficulties going on in Eretz Yisrael and around the world in general. But the other one pertinent to this topic is actually a booklet about healthy boundaries. And it's specifically designed to a undertaught population in these areas, preteen and teenage children. As the children get older and things become less black and white, ever more so do we need to make sure to train and teach the children what are healthy boundaries. Why are they important? Where can they be applied? When it comes to, as the scenario mentioned, going to camps where you're going to be sleeping in bunkhouses with a lot of kids together, understanding what's normal and when it's really important to err on the side of caution and tell an adult, tell a counselor, tell a parent, tell an administrator. This applies in schools and in school campuses and school settings as well, to make sure to know how to speak up for yourself. And again, that goes back to what we spoke about before in terms of teaching those foundational skills, communication skills, emotional coping skills, being in touch with yourself. If we had already classes on all those, and then we come to this hot topic issue of boundaries, the children are so much more well prepared to be able to handle the tools and the techniques of making sure to protect themselves, keep themselves safe, and keep their friends safe. That's just a little bit on the topic of boundaries. That booklet, again, a wonderful parental resource, is there available for free on the website. Please take a look, download it. It's there for parents to be able to have such a conversation with their children, boys and girls. And in the classroom as well, we make sure to present such things to the students so that they understand everything they need to know about boundaries to then go and live a healthy life, ultimately to get married and create families and to give those messages on to the next generation and generations to come.
Okay, so I'll jump in here. A lot of people know me as the boundaries police. When it comes to boundaries, I don't even know where to start. I have so much to say, so I'll try not to say too much and bore everyone. I believe that unhealthy boundaries really is at the root of a lot of dysfunction. I think let's start with like policies and institutions. You know, this camp that she was in. What were their policies? I know that who's the Rivka. Rivka felt that Chana was getting too close to her. And, you know, we're talking about emotional boundaries. Are we talking about physical boundaries? It certainly looks like maybe physical boundaries were crossed. Maybe that's implied here. I was a social worker in a camp for about 15 years. And I spent 2 hours with the staff on boundaries training. And I think that every school needs boundaries training for the teachers. Every camp needs boundaries training. Children should never be in the same bed together, laying in the same bed. Like there are certain policies that we need to make to keep our children safe. I have schools and I work with the girls' schools more. So, and I know this is not any different than the boys' schools, but girls high schools, girls elementary schools call me all the time with various issues that come up, whether it's in Shabbatons, whether it's just in school. And we talk about policy, we talk about education, understanding boundaries, understanding what it means, where I end, where you begin. And these conversations go all the way back. And that's why I wanted to talk about the Kedusha curriculum. I'm a big fan of all those books that are out there. Let's Stay Safe, things like that. My kids, we're reading those, and I have a couple of them. We're reading those as soon as, I don't want to say when they're born, but as soon as they can understand books, we're reading books like that. I think at home, how do I say this? As a therapist, one of the biggest issues that we deal with today is abuse, and it's not usually stranger danger. It's close to home. Often it's very close to home, and it's very frightening. It's very scary, and not always is someone an evil person, but it's up to us as parents and as adults to keep our kids safe. And things like supervision when playing, supervision by family simchas, and there's a lot of free time and a lot of little rooms and shuls and simcha halls. Who sleeps where? Sleepovers. It's up to us as parents and as teachers, as principals, as policyholders, as administrators to keep our children safe, and then to teach them how to voice their concerns. What if this girl, Rivka, had opened her mouth? Why didn't she? Why didn't she open her mouth and say something to her counselor? Where's that parent? Where's that teacher, which we would have in our curriculum, telling them from the minute they're born, from the minute they're in school, like, you're not comfortable, you feel uncomfortable, you say something. When I train the teachers, I train all the female teachers, or my male colleagues train the male teachers to teach this course all over the world, right? And we talk about that in our curriculum. We never say bad or good. Like, it's not about, we try not to place judgment on things. The point is to educate children to make healthy decisions, to understand positive and negative consequences. An example I always give to demonstrate how we do that and why is our feelings unit in 5th grade. And we talk about feelings, and then we categorize them as comfortable and uncomfortable feelings. Then we have the students come up with the different feelings, examples in both categories, and put them on the board with Post-it notes and all the fun stuff, right? But I give that example and I say, well, why don't we call it good feelings and bad feelings? Like, isn't angry a bad feeling? And I always say, like, what happens if, God forbid, a child was abused and that child feels angry? And now her teacher has just said, it's bad to feel angry. What have I done? So we need to give our children the voice to be comfortable or uncomfortable, but to share the feelings that they're having, to open up. My son went to a sleepaway camp for the first time, and I already said I'm a mother of lots of girls and one son. And, some people made fun of me. And I said to my siblings, because a lot of them have sent their boys there already. And I'm like, am I crazy if I call the camp and I ask for, like, is there a sensitivity? Is there a boundaries training? What are the policies? And they're like, yeah, go for it, Shira. You can. So I did. And I was so happy to hear that they've been doing a training for many years. Someone that I knew, I was very comfortable. He told me some of their policies, and I felt, but you know what else? I was showing them, like, hey, this lady's on top of her game. No one's touching my son, and you open your mouth like that. But it is our job to keep our children safe, to set healthy boundaries, to model healthy boundaries, to set up situations in terms of sleeping and sleepovers and things like that, so that keep them as safe as possible. We want prevention, supervision as part of the prevention, and then to give them a voice that if they feel uncomfortable, they need to say something, because inevitably we have to assume that it's going to happen at some point. Someone's going to approach them. And it's going to be that kid whose parents talk to them, whose teachers talk to them about these things, that's going to open their mouth and say no, and isn't, hopefully, isn't going to be a victim.
Thank you all for that, for those answers. And Ms. Breckwith, just to sort of continue where you left off, I think this idea of boundaries and being able to communicate those concerns or fears really goes across all ages. I know from the Israel curriculum, where we spoke about boundaries and healthy boundaries in the yeshivas and in the seminaries. The female colleague from the Israel office, who she wrote the seminary curriculum, I remember she got calls afterwards from some of the teachers. Some of the students came up to her after class and said, well, is this appropriate? Was that okay? Can that fall under the category of unhealthy boundaries? And you would assume people at that age, and people might assume that they know already what's appropriate and what's not. And for many of these students, this is really the first time that they're out of the home, or they're out of the comfort zone that they have here in America. And I think just giving the teachers the ability to address this in a professional, also in a Torah-based way, is extremely powerful. And I think it really has a big effect for those that, like we said, for those who might not know who to call and where to turn to. The next scenario, I think, something that Amudim definitely has its finger on the pulse the best as it can. And it goes as follows. Yitzchak was so excited to go to Reuven's brother's bar mitzvah. Reuven's father was a very, very big, successful businessman, and his parties were always the coolest ones in town. He was making his son a bar mitzvah in one of the hotels, and it was going to be awesome. Yitzchak got to be friendly with Reuven this past year since they became roommates. And although Reuven would sometimes make him do things that he didn't really feel comfortable doing, it was still worth being part of that crowd. Hey, Yitzchak, we're all inside, shouted Shimon. You got to come see how much alcohol there is. This is even better than Purim. Alcohol? I think I'll pass. Oh, come on, Yitzchak. Don't tell me you came all the way here to stay sober. If you don't get drunk, Reuven is not going to invite you to the hotel for Shabbat. He doesn't want anyone ruining this weekend. I don't know. My parents would really get angry if they found out that I drink. Yitzchak, trust me, you really don't want to say no.
I'll jump in. I think that this is another of the many well-known secrets that are out there in terms of drinking in our community. I just quote recently at the Torah Masari convention, one of the Rosh Yeshiva was asked about how much of it is, the Rebbe's responsibility when it comes to things like drinking and smoking. And another Rebbe commented, said, well, look, I can't always be on top of it. And what if he crosses the street, runs across, do I have to be on top of it also? Rosh Yeshiva looked at that Rebbe and said, get out of the business. If you don't really care about the health and the emotional and physical health of your Talmud, then you're in the wrong business. It's not just about teaching. And we have to realize that teaching our children about the dangers of alcohol is no different than teaching them Arba Avis, Nezikin, and all the other things that we're teaching them. It's a reality of the world that we're living in right now. And the difference that you'll see between education and lack of education can be literally huge. I mean, again, I don't want to start talking scenarios because they're not pleasant. They're not pleasant, whether it be broken marriages because of something that happened at bar mitzvahs and just continued on, whether it be, and this has come across, students who didn't realize that not all fathers come home drunk and angry every Shabbos morning. This is something that part of the mile of the curriculum is that it helps give students the opportunity to express things that they may not have expressed otherwise, besides what they're learning in the curriculum, just, the things that they're expressing. This scenario might sound like, a cute story. Okay, we'll be a little bit more careful. It's much deeper than that. Take a look at any chasna, take a look at bar mitzvah. It's definitely getting better. People are definitely being more careful, but this is something that we need to change. We need to change as a community, not just as individuals, but as a community. And it's Torah. It's something that we ultimately, every Rosh Yeshiva, every Manal, everyone is on, aware of and working on. And it has to be, though, a community-wide project. It's not enough if we have that the Rabbanim are asering in certain places. So you have literally, I've seen it, you have adults who are hiding their bottles like little kids because it's been asered by a kiddush. That's a problem. Another part of the problem is that bottle may cost more than my car. There are serious issues that are here, and it's up to us to address it. The best way is education. Just telling someone, to quote Dr. Shook, who's a well-known psychologist, when you tell someone something is usser, what he's hearing is hide it better. If you tell someone why something is usser, you've now educated him and explained to him why he needs to be doing something different. And that's where curriculum comes in. It's not enough just to say don't drink. It's about understanding, and that's really a major part of what we're doing. But it's something that I can't stress it enough. Just the importance of this topic among many topics. And not people should not get the idea that we just deal with the curriculum deals with drinking and deals with abuse. No, the curriculum deals with all of the various different emotions and the various different stages that people are facing during that time. We happen to be highlighting now, number one, because we're dealing it kind of through the lens of Amudim, as well as that we're only doing 3 or 4 scenarios. So we're picking those that might be the most dramatic. But that's, don't walk away with the wrong idea that that's what the curriculum is all about. But all part of that healthy living. They're all pieces of the puzzle. You can't have a puzzle if one of those pieces is missing. So it's so important, again, as you see, passionate about it, but that we all get this and that we get it right. We can honestly say our Talmidim and Talmidos' life, and yes, Talmidos also don't think it's not by the girls, literally depends on it.
I'll just add in, thank you, Rabbi Grossberg. Sometimes people wonder, should we be educating in general on all these hot topics? We mentioned already, I'll mention it a third time, how we teach the foundational topics to then get into some of these more intense issues. But should we be mentioning them? Because maybe we're planting seeds in the boys' and girls' minds about drinking. They never would have thought to drink before. Now they're thinking about drinking. We talk about vaping. We have classes on vaping. We have classes even on marijuana. We have classes on these different topics because we recognize that the vast majority of kids are already exposed to these topics in one way or another. We also recognize, and the research bears this out, that when you present on any topic, even topics that maybe the kids never thought of before, but you present it in a clear and confident way that's well prepared, where the ideas are presented not in a confused manner of, I'm not really so sure why this is something which is not good for you. Maybe because of this and maybe because of that. But no, the lesson plan is there with clear articulation of the issues when it comes to vaping. It's not just, well, we don't know so much about it yet. It's that a little bit, but a lot more that can be shared, that can be based on the science and the research and the presentation of what the base of such a chemical can do, that's in the vaping, and that's all, and all the vaping liquids can do to the lungs, et cetera, et cetera. It's so important that we teach the children and arm them with this education and information, so that not if, but when there's some level of peer pressure in one, at least one of these areas, they'll be able to protect themselves. They'll be able to withstand that peer pressure. We have classes on peer pressure itself, talking about how to have refusal skills, how to be able, giving them 10 tips and a document that they can take home with them, 10 tips on how best to say no to a substance, but also to any unhealthy boundary crossing, any other type of suggestion or behavior or activity that's something that really they don't feel comfortable doing and they know they shouldn't do. Darcheinu and Our Path SEL really tries to prepare the students, and again, parents can gain from it as well. I want to mention that the parental piece has been expanded greatly with a wonderful new newsletter, a weekly newsletter that we put out for the parents to be able to have scenarios that they can go over with their students. And so we recognize this is crucial. There's a prepared template for schools to be able to communicate with the parents of the units and sessions that were just covered in the last few weeks. We recognize that the trifecta here is everyone working together on the same team, all three, parents, educators, and students. When we all get on the same team, and I'd like to say Darcheinu and Our Path SEL is a great way for us to all get on that same team. When we're all there working together, the potential is limitless for the growth, for the protection, and for the healthy well-being development of our children and our students.
So I just want to jump in and just to clarify, we are very cautious in the material that we present to our students. We try to be very careful to present them in an age-appropriate way and at the comfort level of the hashkafa of every school, with the Vada Yeshiva of Torah Masorah and Rabbi Bruni as our guidance there. For boys, we talk about addictions. In 8th grade, we're discussing already vaping and smoking alcohol, because if we didn't, I think we would be really hurting our boys as they head to yeshiva. For girls, we don't talk about it. We talk about peer pressure. We talk about unhealthy choices. We talk about all these foundational skills, but we don't bring it in at all in the Darcheinu curriculum, which is for the Beis Yaakov school system, until 12th grade, where we have a unit on addictions, which is done in a very tanua, a very batamta way, but just to kind of give an overview of addictions, because again, as a therapist, if we don't let our 12th grade girls, by the time they're graduating high school, know what an addiction is, I think it's pretty scary. We can be setting many girls up to be hurt themselves when they struggle with an addiction, to be hurt when someone they're dating may have an addiction, when their husband got for someone in their family. So at that point, we feel like it's important to address that topic. I just wanted to clarify that.
I'll just add in, one of the beautiful parts of this curriculum is that there's built-in supervision. That means that we make ourselves available. We even have a whole supervisory team under us ready to supervise all of the teachers. And we encourage that strongly, because this allows for the customization and the adaptation of the curriculum to make it feel comfortable for each and every school. We have some principals, Manalim, who will tell us, you know what, we actually need to bring a substance abuse piece in 6th grade or 7th grade. Some who will say, not sure if we want 6th grade, maybe we'll wait till 8th grade. We are there to work with every school at the comfort level in which they exist, for the culture in which they're serving, and everything is fully customizable. Having weekly supervisions allows us to go through that process with you, to make suggestions, to say, you know, you can use this unit or that unit. You can skip to that unit. You can skip this session and do a different session now. And we can prepare you to make sure that you do the foundational sessions before you get to that one, etc. There's a lot of customization that can be had. This way it can be made comfortable and appropriate for every single school, every Jewish school across the spectrum worldwide.
Thank you all. I think it's clear from some of these scenarios just how expansive this curriculum is and how many different realms of the social emotional development it addresses. And because it does go from 5th grade all the way up to 12th, and now with the extra 13th grade. And like Mrs. Berkowitz was saying before, even if the person themselves is not going through that specific struggle or challenge, or even if that term is not being used today, they might get married, they might have their own children later on, and it just comes up somewhere along the line. So having that education from the forefront is really something that I think we could all use. Thank everybody for being part of the segment today. I know for me it was a privilege just being part of this team and being part of this amazing campaign. Anybody that now wants to go and sort of bring Darcheinu or Our Path into their schools, whether you're an educator, an administrator, a parent, you could look us up, darcheinu.org, ourpathsel.org, or send us an email, info@darcheinu.org, info@ourpathsel.org. We have an amazing team here, and we'll do everything that we can to get this curriculum into your school.